Very often I get questions about what is the role of a treasurer? And the answer is it depends. Well, I have another video about that topic and I want you to go ahead and check that out. But you treasurers can range from treasurers who kind of do it all, do everything, to some that just are making sure it's all been done. So today, I am not going to focus on that, but I'm going to talk to you about a very important tool that you can use to make sure that the fiduciary duty of your nonprofit and your board members is being fulfilled. Hi, I'm Teresa Clark, and I'm a seasoned CPA with over 25 years of experience serving 501c3 organizations. I've worked external to the organizations as an auditor, and I've worked inside the nonprofit organizations as a CFO. So I bring a unique perspective to your financial journey. I hope you'll jump on my website and learn more at teresaclark.com. All right, today's topic is about verification report. You may not have ever seen one of these. It's something that I'm really finding is so effective and helpful in the nonprofits that I work with. We all can agree that internal controls, or maybe you call them checks and balances or safeguards, they are important. It is important to have these. And it's really important as a board member because you have a fiduciary duty to make sure that the nonprofit is guarding and protecting its assets and ensuring that the resources are used for their intended purpose, but also that there's no theft or loss of funds. Okay, so you want to work hard to set up those checks and balances, but once they're set up, today's topic is a really important one because those things can often get laxed. They can get, just so forgotten over time, or maybe there's been turnover and in the gap in the transition or the really quick handoff and quasi training, this gets overlooked. So turnover can create a problem where the procedures and the safeguards are forgotten. Sometimes it's just a situation where the existing staff get real familiar with each other and skip that step because I trust them. Well, I like to say, just like Ronald Reagan, trust, yes, you should trust, but verify. So this verification report is all about verifying. And it's one of the best practices I have ever seen put in place. Here we go. Two things. First of all, let's talk about what it is. It is first a small section, sometimes bigger, one page, about what are the key separations of duties. So it's just like a real quick bullet point list or sections of what are our procedures. So example, how is cash handled? Are we requiring two people to be present? Are we using a receipt book? Those kinds of things. Maybe there's another section that talks about how payroll is processed. Does one person have the ability to process payroll and nobody else is verifying it? Or how are expense and payments done? Who signs the check? Who verifies ACH payments at the bank? These kinds of things are the very first part of the verification report, and in that, it documents what our procedures are. Now, once they've been documented, every time you produce this report, you want to highlight any changes that have been made. Sometimes that's a staff person who's changed. So, this person A is now gone or transitioned to a new role, and so now person B is doing that job. You want to list the names and show who has the duties that are creating the checks and balances. Now, the next step is to create a report, a layout of the things that are being done to confirm that these processes are being used. And there's also a couple of things that need to be done every month that may not have been talked about in detail in your summary of how you handle things. Okay, here are some things I think need to be on your report. Bank reconciliations. Who does the bank reconciliation? By when was it done? The date it was completed. What were the balances that were reconciled to? So, the bank balance was 35,451. Okay, great. Right. Let's write that number there. Again, I think about it like a spreadsheet, whatever tool you like to use to document it. But we're talking about like bank reconciliations and then, each line of your bank accounts and then these columns, who was it done by when was it done? What were the balances? And then here's the most important part. Who reviewed the bank reconciliation? Bank reconciliations are very, very, very good places to see all the transactions of the organization. And there's some really important things you want to be doing when you look at a bank reconciliation. Let's talk about that in a video here in the future. Okay, next you want to look at How maybe some things like payments that were made. I would suggest, somebody's looking at, all the payments made for the month. Bank reconciliation is one place to get that, and maybe picking a handful depending on your organization. I mean, if you spent 2,000, made 2,000 payments, you're going to have more looked at than if you had 50 payments. So, selecting a handful and documenting how many were looked at. Maybe it's 5. I wouldn't recommend that. I'm just using it as an example. So we write, again, here on the verification report, payments that were made, that's what we're looking at. Number that were looked at, 5, maybe list out there the vendor, the amount, and the purpose of the payment. So maybe list the 5 transactions that were looked at that month. This person that's doing this work should be someone separate from the person who originally made those payments. So they're reviewing to make sure, were those expenses all properly approved? Did the right person in the organization sign off on that payment, that the goods were received, the services received, that's within their budget, blah, blah, blah. Not blah, blah, blah. They're really important things. But, and then next, the supporting documentation. This is a step by which the person verifying is actually pulling those documents to look at them. Now, I hope that you're using your software tools, and that's really a digital process that they can have view rights to look at. But at worst case, you've got paper files, and we're pulling paper files to look at these things. So in our verification report, we've now looked at some payments received, documented the number, the general nature of the thing, confirmed all was well, and reported any exceptions. And so whoever does that work needs to be independent of it and needs to sign off that that's what they just did. Next, let's talk about payroll. A couple of ideas there would be, maybe in this verification step, someone is pulling just a batch of payroll within the pay period, or the month or the quarter that are being looked at. And they're just looking at it to make sure the person paid is a true employee. So they're looking at names. The amount that they were paid was approved. If they've got hourly employees, maybe they're looking at the hours that they worked. Oh yeah, that's a part-time person. They're working 20 hours. That makes sense. Or that person's full-time and they're, working so many hours of overtime every pay period. Okay, let's be mindful of that. So this could be an example where, again, you pull a batch within the pay period or the period that you're looking at. Another tool, though, is if you use a third-party payroll processor, lots of them available, they often can offer audit reports. Now, what that is you're just looking at changes that were made. And so you pull the audit report and you can look really quickly, oh, so-and-so, a new employee was added. Was that employee a legitimate new employee? So, hours that were worked, you can look at the audit report on those. Those are a couple of ideas. So it just depends on your unique situation. This is definitely not a one size fits all. That's why I'm not really handing you a verification example. It really is something you want to spend time, and your board can be so valuable in looking at and helping to create this. And then you customize this verification process and report based on your organization and based on the processes you've decided are very good for you. It should be provided to the board or the treasurer in a much larger nonprofit, maybe, that needs to be provided regularly. Now, that might be monthly, which is ideal, or it might be quarterly, which is understandable if you have a smaller nonprofit. So what am I loving about this? Why am I finding this to be so valuable? Well, it's because we are doing the most important thing, which is inspecting what we expect. And this keeps the conversation about the separation of duties in the front and center. And it's going to prevent relaxing your expectations and relaxing the practices where they have not aligned with your expectations, which ultimately the risk is that it can create a place where there can be an opportunity for theft in your organization. So we really want to work hard on this. Well, I hope you found this information valuable and insightful. If you're hungry for more resources, subscribe here where you're watching, or check out my free resources on my website, teresaclark.com. I'm here to support you. So if you have questions, need clarification, or if you're going to want to discuss how my services can help your nonprofit, book a strategic consult with me on my website, teresaclark.com. I'm wishing you incredible success and impact through your nonprofit endeavors.